Hello. Hi. Hello. I have this working. For now, at least. Um, I want I I I will apologize ahead of time. I am recovering from a chest infection. That's why I wasn't streaming for a bit, for a good couple of weeks. I wanted to stream, I just physically couldn't breathe. Um, but yeah, I have grabbed one of my childhood favorite games, and it's still really fucking loud for me. Holy shit, I can't hear myself think. No matter what I do, don't go to the little demo. Don't do it. Don't. Stop. Stop it. Oh, what was that? I think my magical Wii has some issues. That's fine though. But yeah, Cello's existing too. He hasn't gone to bed yet. Because it's a little bit early. But I might have to put him to bed soon because he's been getting grumpy and wanting to go to sleep earlier recently. But yeah. This is one of my childhood favorite games. I'm gonna stick it to here. Just so it doesn't go to the demo. See, he's already getting grumpy. It's like, it's not even 9 p.m. yet. He's getting grumpy. Yeah, you are. You're so grumpy, Cello. You are so grumpy. Grumpy grump. Hold on, I'm gonna put him to bed real quick. Okay. Yeah, one of my favorite games. I played it all the time as a kid. I love this game. I still love this game. No one can make you hate me, Harvest Moon Magical Melody. I love you. You're so good. But yeah, let's just get going. It has been a hot minute, but I still remember quite a lot of details, so I don't think it should be an issue. Like I said, I played this like obsessively. I think I got like 4 or 5 years in on my main playthrough when I was a kid, because I played it like multiple days in a row for hours. At least it felt like it. I was very young though. Exciting ranch farm. We're looking for ranchers. Would you like to work in Flowerbud Village? Buy property that you choose and live a warm and rewarding ranch lifestyle. The mayor of Flowerbud Village. Do. I still remember vividly, I had such a crush on Ellen as a kid. She's the one that I married in my childhood playthrough. I also had a crush on Jamie. I liked both of them a lot. Although I thought Jamie was kind of a dick also, but like, you know, we can have both. Well, howdy there. It's good of you to visit. I'm Theodore, the mayor of this village. It's a pleasure to meet you. So, what's your name again? I have tried other, not Harvest Moon, because obviously the current quote-unquote Harvest Moon games are not actually Harvest Moon. We all know this. But I have tried playing like some of the remakes of older games or some of the new games in Story of Seasons. They just don't hit the same. They feel very cold to me, is like a big complaint I have about them. Like I got Friends in Mineral Town, I think, and I played it for a bit and I was like, this is kind of mid. Which is a shame because I'd heard the original was really good, but it didn't hit right. Oh yes, it's Nabby, right? First, choose a lot and a house from the following. Village center, not a lot of space, but convenient. Oceanside lands is spacious, but not fertile. Riverside, convenient for fishing, but I'm trying to remember what. I think I might have gotten this one on my original. No, I think I got my original playthrough when I was a kid. I believe I got the village center and then I expanded to Oceanside for like extra stuff. I think. I want to say. I want to say that was the case. But I think I'll go with Oceanside. It's close to the ocean and is good for raising livestock, but the land isn't fertile. So it may be difficult to farm. Will you purchase this land? Actually, no. I will go village center, I think. This is conveniently located close to many shops into the mountains and caves, but the lots are small, so you need to first buy property or you won't be able to build. Barns or chicken coops. Will you purchase this lot? Let me check what I'll say. This is the perfect place for fishing along the river. The land is fertile, and the property is an okay size, so it should be possible to raise livestock. You purchase this? Oh, I might actually grab this one. I'll grab this one. I don't think I used this one too much in my original childhood playthrough. I think I had all three because I played so much. I don't think I really knew what to do with the Riverside one. I don't want to start off by saying too much, but please don't forget this. If you push the 1 button, the color of the ground changes. Yes, I know. Your lot is blue. Other people's property is yellow, and common property is green. Please be careful not to throw things away on property other than your own. I do remember this. I had it like permanently on. I'd like to register the name of your reg, so please pick a name for your place. We'll go nice and appropriate. Because I almost always go with like Fae Farm or Fairy Farm or whatever nowadays. Because it just works. It just works. It simply works. Uh-huh, that's a good name. It's already late today, so please rest. I'll show you to your house. Oh! This is a used house, and it already has most household items. If you don't like, please rearrange them later. The toolbox also holds basic tools, so it'd be a good idea to put them in the rucksack. That would be a good idea, thanks Theodore. There's a lumber shed behind the house. There's also a mailbox and a shipping box. Well then, Nemi, good luck. Thank you. I know what the fuck I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I know how to get started in this. I say, having not played this game in like a decade, probably. Should I move the household items around? It's fine. I'm tired today, so maybe I'll go to sleep soon. We just got here! We just got here! It's a bit silly about that. Yes. And here's our quote-unquote plot. She does have such a pretty design, though. For, like, such a simple style. People forget how to appreciate. They forgot kind thoughts. The heart to believe. They forgot mindfulness. The heart to love. And my existence. Goodbye, everyone. Just fucking dies. Me too, bitch. Me too. Ah, the harvest goddess turned to stone. Ah, the harvest goddess. Ah! Hi, Jamie. Are you good? What has she turned into? I will get you back to normal. Rock? I think is the answer. I think she's petrified, Jamie. It was a dream. What a strange dream. Hello? Footsteps on my property. I just got here. Oh, hi. Little tiny people. Yeah, no, Sam, I'd probably be like, what the fuck? Hello? You want to say something? We're just gonna stand here? What the fuck? What? You can see us? Uh-huh. It's been a while since someone could see us, yeah. I have a favor to ask, yeah? 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 Well. Yeah, you want to tell me what the favor is? Oh, you're just taking me over here. It has been a very long time since I would have seen the intro to this game. Rock. That's the harvest goddess, but something has happened to her. She turned into stone 1 year ago and has been that way since. Please, I want you to return the harvest goddess to her former self, yeah? A lot of notes are needed to return the harvest goddess to her former self, yeah? I want you to collect a lot of notes, yeah? Yeah. Huh? Hi, Jamie. What's up? I just got here. You don't have to be so disapproving. I guess you guys found another person that can see you, huh? Give up already. Jamie, we're gonna find those together, yeah? Stop bugging me. I don't want to hang out with you guys. She got that way because of humans in the first place. But the harvest goddess told us to get along with people, yeah? You guys do whatever you want to do. I'm the one who will rescue her. You'll see. I feel like I should correct something real quick. Hold on. Let me fix something. Oop. No, that's not what I want to do. There we go. Don't mind my magic Wii stuff. Nabbie, do your best, yeah? If you do a lot of things, you'll get a lot of notes, yeah? I'll give you this. I bet it'll help you, yeah? Yeah? I got a pedometer. I know what it's for, but like, it's so funny. Just... They're just like, can you help us? We'll give you a pedometer to help you. It's like, what? If you carry the pedometer, it'll count your steps. You'll be able to tell how hard you've worked. It's such a silly thing to get given. Nabbie, do your best, yeah? Wow, bye. Whoa! Yippee! Got a musical note. First step note. It's difficult to take the first step, no matter what you were doing. The first step of farm life note. At least like you've picked up a note. So you get different notes like this, yeah. There are 100 notes in all. You can take a look in the menu, yeah. 5 notes make a musical instrument, so after you've collected 5 notes, I'd like you to come back to this harvest goddess spring, yeah. Okay. Bye-bye. I'm still very tired from chest infection shit. Oh, hi, Ellen. Hello. You're the one who signed up for the exciting ranch plan, right? I'm Ellen. We also run a ranch. Nice to meet you. She's so fucking cute. I know this is sudden, but I have a favor to ask. This dog was born on our farm. Would you mind keeping it? The dog will be much happier here with you than alone on our farm. Come on. Bark. Bow, bow. Bow, bow. Thank you. Why don't you name this little puppy? Ooh, Kiwi. That's what I used to have a little mascot called Kiwi. I've been debating bringing it back, but I want to change the design, so it's like... Why is there like a weird space? That's so strange. Why is it formatted like that? The heck? Okay. Isn't that great, Kiwi? You'll be treated well. Bye now. Please come hang out at Blue Sky Ranch. I will. Believe me, I will. I'll give everyone a fair shot. But... Oh, speed of movement. Hi. Oh, no. No, that's not... I don't know why I keep doing that. No. There we go. Bye. Trying to remember how controls work. Ooh. Sit. Well, that ain't it. 48. Wow, already 48. No. Yeah, that's what that does. It's been a while. Yeah. Those recipes. Here's the map. There's our notes. So... If I remember correctly, this one is for staying up 24 hours, I think. Okay. Well, that calls you to me. That does... that. Point. How did I put it away though? Oh, there we go. I'll still just, I could... Maybe there's not a way to... I don't know. Let's see. Probably want that. Just keep that in here. I don't think... I know. Here. I guess this. I don't think we'll be fishing just yet. Oh, we gotta... Well, no, I need to get, like, seeds and shit. Let's see. Okay, there's a little bit of space. Not much, though. Ooh, let's see if I can... I mean, they're right here. That is quite handy. Hold on, face stream important. It's important. How am I doing? I'm recovering. Like, my chest is at, like, 90%. Like, my breathing capacity is still off, and it probably will be for, like, the next week or something. But I'm feeling quite significantly better than I did a couple of days ago. I can mostly breathe. I'm still a little sore. It still hurts a little bit, but, like, for the most part, it's significantly better than it was. I do reckon probably tomorrow I'll be back to mostly, like, good enough. My cough is a bit off. My headspace. It's okay. I don't know. I've been very all over the place, just like in general. It's not bad. I'm feeling decent enough, like mentally. I don't know, about normal. You came over. Welcome to Blue Sky Ranch. You don't look familiar. Are you the one that came over on the excited whatever plan? That's right, Nebby's taking care of the puppy for us. Oh, this is my father. I'm Hank. Nice to meet you. Our store handles items related to animals. The guy you often see in the fields is my cousin Blue. He's helping us with this ranch. He can be difficult at times, but try to get along with him. Oh, that's right. I'll give you this. You might notice I'm having to take pauses for breaths a bit more than usual. Don't mind that. I got an animal notebook. It's a notebook for first-time ranchers. It has a lot of information related to animals, so it's useful to read. Okay, come by again. Keep at it so you can raise animals. I will. Believe me, I will. Ugh. I don't remember. There's just animal products, I think. Okay. I'm trying to remember a lot of stuff because it's been a hot minute. It's probably been like 10 years since I last played this game. Maybe even longer. So it's like, I played this game so much that I do still remember a lot of details, but... Weed. But I will say, like, there's a lot of things. I don't remember where things are. It's been a while. My mental map is a kinda, hi, hello, we're friends now. This is the clinic. I don't need anything from the clinic right now. You would usually go up here to gather stuff. Unless the mine's there. And it's like, over... This is JB's ranch. I don't need to be here right now. If I go up here... I think that's something here. What is this? Put that in there. That's something to sell. Yeah, you can, like, forage stuff. Yeah, no. Same as, like... you know, every other farming sim, I suppose. How do I... Not that. That's wasting my energy. Not this. I'm trying to recall... trying to recall how to do this. Especially because I'm not exactly playing on a native controller. So I don't fully remember. Yippee! Lucky! Got a musical note. First shipping note. Lots of deliveries from the first. Happiness of the very first delivery note. Yahoo! Where do I get seeds? I forget. Oh, hi, Duck. You're my friend now. We're going to get soft tacos later. Let's see if I can remember. Oh, it might be here. Yeah. Oh, they're closed. Well. Okay. I guess I'll just go foraging then. Foraging and maybe clearing up my land. Let's do this. That helps. Hold on. How do I do this? That ain't right. I'm sure there's a way to cycle it, but I don't... No, not that, not that, not that. I am trying so hard to remember how the fuck to play this. No, I don't know why I keep clicking that. That's a hoe. Oops. That's not what I meant. I'm struggling a little bit, okay? How the fuck? Sorry, what the fuck? I'm like, this ain't right. This isn't the right thing. I don't... I don't remember how to switch this. That's not what I want to do. No. I don't remember the mechanics for this. I'm sure there's definitely a way. There's definitely a way. How do I do this? Why are you bringing that out? That's not what I want at all. That's not at all what I want. No. Oh no. Maybe if I... No, that still doesn't do it. What the fuck? What is the mechanic? I don't remember the mechanic! Well, that doesn't do anything. No! Stop! That's not what I'm trying to do. Ah, fuck me. What the fuck? I might have to look up what fucking button this is. This doesn't help. Heh? What do I have this config to? Hold on. Oh. Okay. Why? Why do I have it set up like that? That's okay, whatever. That's my bad. Okay. I know what my issue is. There we go. Okay, do you want to actually switch to it though? Okay, there we go. There we go. We got it. Hey. I don't know if I can actually do anything about that. That being said, I don't know, bin shit. I'm gonna go on a little adventure. It's a little adventure. So you can grab... get money up here. We're gonna need some. Hi, Rabbit! Bunny! Bunny! I don't need to take you around with me. That's fine. So I don't have very much stamina at the moment, and I have nothing to recover it either. Huh, nothing's really spawned up here just yet, I guess. I did find like that one, but I guess there's just not much going at the moment. Okay. I guess for steps? Question mark? Sun though? Or not? When you run around in the sun, you feel your strength flowing through you. A bright and cheerful rhythm. Okay. Sure, I guess. Woohoo, woohoo. You can stay out for a bit. Unlike Stardew, you can stay up however long you want. Okay, I guess I'm carrying this. I can't stack things, I guess. Woohoo! So yeah, like, unlike Stardew, there's no rush to get home necessarily. Except for the fact that I don't remember where home is. It's here. Here we go. Yeah. I think we can go and grab that other one as well. Can get just a little bit of money to start off with. Since I wasted so much time just trying to like sort out my equipped item. But yeah, you kind of quite quickly need you need to get bigger backpacks. 'Cause even less than like Stardew starts you off with. Stardew's at least a little nice. It gives you like 10 spaces to start with. Or 9? Is it 9? I don't remember. I don't remember. I think it's 10 though. It's either 9 or 10 spaces. Either way, it gives you a little bit of leeway. This one's like... you can't even carry all of your equipment. Okay. Good. Okay. We can go to sleep now. I'm happy enough with that, I guess. It's about as good as we're gonna get. Oh yeah, I should probably save. That'll help. Wow, new file. But that's not what I meant. Hi, puppy. Go to bed. You learned how to do legs? Oh, you had an art lesson with your art friend again. Nice. May you draw fabulous legs. Hurrah. Oh, hi. Bob. Hey, so you're the new ranch owner. I'm Bob. My work is carrying produce for shipping. Yeah, I remember you. I'll quickly explain it to you. I've already done this, but okay. This is a shipping box. The stuff in here like fruits, vegetables, animal products, and items collected from the hills and fields. On the following morning, stuff gets shipped, and you get paid then. We did that instead of tabletop because I presume the GM slept in again. Oh, that's... I really dislike when you have, like, uncommunicative GMs. It's probably my pet peeve. There's, like, nothing against those GMs, but, like, I need communication on, like, a basic level. Or else I'm gonna get really irritated with you. But, I mean, at least you got an art lesson out of it. That's something. So don't make a mistake or anything. Okay! I look so worried. I don't know, that's why I poke all of my games twice. As you should. While we're at it, I'll tell you about lumber. Oh. Oh, okay. The shed at the back of the house is the lumber shed. Once the day before, once an hour before. Yeah. My current games, we tend to confirm usually a few days before, and then if anything comes up, it's like you have that day. Because my games always run in the evening, so there's like all day before it. It's like if you're gonna have an issue, like you gotta bring it up. When you remove stumps and branches, the lumber automatically ends up there. You can use the A button to remove the lumber. But you can't put stakes in, so be careful. It may be tough at first, but don't give up and keep at it. Okay, see ya. Bye-bye! But yeah, I have had a game basically die to a non-communicative GM, and I had told him like multiple times, like, hey, like, you need to communicate when a game is or isn't happening, because the reason people can't come is because you're not saying anything. People don't even know if there's a game going or not. It's like, how are people supposed to, like, do anything? You know? But, you know. It'd be like that. But I do think, I don't know, I find it quite disrespectful if you can't, like, communicate on a basic level. I can't. I just can't. Where are you going? Stop drift. Why are you even drifting? There's nothing to drift on here. Can you even bring down trees with this? Oh my god. Okay. I'll keep trying then. Oh, Jesus Christ. Fucking... I haven't even done anything! Oh, fuck this shit. No, I'm not dealing with that. You pick up the weeds. We'll clear off what we can, I suppose. I think there's somewhere to get food. Yeah, all of my current GMs are super great at communicating, because, I mean, I guess you kind of have to be to some extent. But, yeah. I think the annoying part for me with the game that died because of the lack of communication was that earlier it had been fine. I don't know. I mean, I know it was mental health related, but I was just like, you can't just not say anything. Like, if you want this to work. And it got to the point of like, listen, you can't keep like yoinking us around like this. You can't keep canceling last second. Or hell, canceling an hour later than we were supposed to start. Because that happened. It was like, you can't do that. Like, I can't fucking do it. I have other shit in my life. I can't rotate my life around a game that isn't working because you're not doing, like, the basic part. I'm still friends with this guy. Like, he's a nice guy, but it was just like, dude, like, if your mental state isn't good enough to, like, communicate on a basic level, you shouldn't be running. Like, you shouldn't run a game. It's not okay. So, it's like, I ended up, like, snapping at him. Well, it wasn't so much snapping, I was putting my foot down, because it was 3 weeks in a row that we cancelled so last minute because the GM just didn't show up. And it was like, you can't do this. Like, I don't care if it's online. Like, you can't do that. That's fucked up, man. Like, I've got other shit to do. I think the worst I've ever done was actually sleep through sessions. See, here's the thing. I don't mind if it happens once. It happens. Like, things happen. People sleep through, people get ill last minute. You know, that's fine. Like, if we cancel last minute, like, I don't inherently have an issue with canceling last minute. It's when it's purely on, like, a scheduling skill issue. Where I'm just like, you can't, like, fuck around with people's schedules like that, man. You can't, like, disrespect people's time regularly. You know? I've had other games where, like, the GM wasn't particularly respectful about people's time. And I was like, we put up with it, because at least games were happening. I've also been doing sorry about characters doing Pathfinder games, but otherwise I'm very regular about my plans. Yeah, like, I would hate to... That's not the right... Oops. No. No. Oh my god. This doesn't work. But yeah, no. It's probably one of my biggest no-nos. Like, I can deal with having my schedule yoinked around. Like, I can make room for things, like, last minute. It's fine. I just need you to actually tell me. You know, there's a certain level of respect to it, I think. It didn't help that, like, I wasn't, in general, like, with this friend, I wasn't being treated the best. Like, even in private conversations for most of last year. I think a lot of it was because of, like, his mental health, but it was like, hey, you cannot fucking treat me like that. Like, what the fuck? We're chill now, but it was just like, dude. Like, other people in the group are noticing. Like, come on. So yeah. My flatmate sent me something. Hello. Hi, Alex. It's so funny. I still remember all these characters' names. It's been like a decade, but I played so much, I still remember their names. At least a good amount of them. I'm Alex. Everyone in the village calls me Doctor. I'm new to this town like you, but I already love it here. You should really stay on top of your health. Since you're here, let me have a quick look. As far as I can tell, you look healthy. Good for you. Yay! Hi. These dogs have decided to join me. That's right, if you find some herbs in the mountain, can you ship them? Unless herbs are at the market, medicine can't be made. I'll be counting on you. Already doing it. Caesar. Hey. No, you can't go under there. Oh, and Molly's back. My flatmate is trying to get the dogs out. I see to just trip them up. They're silly. They're silly like that. There's one cool feature of this game, is... Yeah. The, time stops when you're in buildings, which I don't see in a lot of, farming sims. I know Stardew Valley doesn't have that, so it means I can kind of just chill in a building instead of pausing the whole game. Yeah, you know, that's kind of cool. It's something I always quite liked. Let's talk to Jamie. It's locked. Jamie, are you about? Oh. Dramatic. Hi, I'm hopping your fence. Fuck your boundaries. Huh? I don't know what those rascals did to stir you up, but I'm not gonna lose to you. Remember that. Girl, I ain't done anything. How long you gonna stay there daydreaming? Huh? You're a nuisance. Get out of here. Okay, sorry. The fear. Yeah, I did have. I'll be honest. That wasn't like the one with the friend. That wasn't the first time I've had a kind of flaky GM, but it was probably the only time I've had it where it's actually like killed a game. What did I just trip on? What the fuck? Ah. See if I can find any herbs. Probably I should go and see if I can get seeds. Oh, whatever. Not much use if I can't. Oh, you know what? That fruit will work. Ugh. There's some things you can jump over. But yeah, I do. Like, one of the other times I've had a kind of flaky DM, it was worse in some aspects because it was a real-life game. So it's like, it takes me 40 minutes to get to the place where we were hosting that game, right? So if it didn't happen very often, I will be clear, it didn't. It was frequent that he was late. That was fine. I don't care about lateness. That's whatever to me. But like the times where he kind of forgot, those kind of sucked. It was like, I walked 40 minutes to get here. I have to walk 40 minutes to go home. And you don't. You know. That one kind of sucked a bit. Let's see if there's anything here. Hello, hello. Hi, welcome. Let's get some foraging stuff done, I guess. I haven't done shit on day 2. We'll grab some coral. Or seaweed or whatever. I don't know. God, I am still struggling with like getting enough breath in, which kind of sucks. I was hoping I could like maybe talk a bit more, but I'm having like I think you can hear it that I'm having to pause quite a lot just to take a breath. It's like I think it was the worst part of having a chest infection. It's just the fact that, like, I haven't had it as, like, an issue before where I, like, quite significantly couldn't breathe properly. Like, it's usually just like, oh, my chest fucking hurts and I feel like shit. which sucks. But like, this is the first time I straight up have not been able to like walk normally because I couldn't breathe. I was thinking about the webcomic. Yeah, I cannot speak today. Jesus. Oh. Thinking about one of the webcomics I read. There's a character named Inky, and I've made a few recurring Pinky and the Brain jokes. Yeah, it's like a nasty chest infection that I had. It was to the point I had to call my doctor twice, like 2 days apart, because basically it was like the first time I was in so much pain. I was like, hey, I think I have a chest infection. Can you check it? Because it's like, I wasn't sure if it was like bronchitis chest infection or walking pneumonia type chest infection, and if I might have needed like antibiotics. I didn't. It's not bacterial. It was just a virus. Did I have like asthma or bronchitis? I think it was bronchitis. This is like my third time getting one this year. I think so. I had COVID. Like, it's not my first time having a chest infection, to be clear. Like, this year, like, I have always kind of been a bit more prone to chest infections. Like, I had one as a baby, and then I had one a couple years ago as well. And I had like I had an asymptomatic COVID infection in November, and it's since then that I've been getting them like every 3 or 4 months. So I'm starting to suspect that my immune system might have gotten a bit fucked. Which is a bit irritating because it wasn't even my fault that I caught it. I didn't go anywhere. I got it because my flatmate went to the US and caught it there. And then brought it back, and we didn't know because they had a they got a false negative on their COVID test. When they got home, so you know that fucked us over. Yeah, it did suck. It was like, well, fuck me. Like, I could do everything right, and I just, as far as I'm aware, that's the only time I've had it. But yeah, it was mostly asymptomatic. It was like I had like mild nasal congestion, and I had a migraine on the first day I had it, and then like it was fine. It was, but like there is like the whole thing where if you're asymptomatic, it's worse in some aspects. Because if you're asymptomatic, your body isn't fighting it properly. And like, I wasn't fully asymptomatic, but like, I wasn't getting a lot of symptoms, especially after like the first day. So I do think it might have screwed with my immune system a bit. Because like the extra weird thing with my chest infections, normally when you have a viral chest infection, you will usually have like a cold or something first, right? Because you get the chest infection from a virus, and then it turns into a chest infection. I haven't had that. I'm jumping straight to a chest infection. So I heavily suspect my immune system might not be very happy. Because it took a while for symptoms of my chest infection to kick in also. Like symptoms that indicated that my body was actually, you know, doing anything about it. Like, I didn't have a cough for the first couple of days of it. Like, it lagged behind quite a bit, actually. So it was like, okay. I did have, like, a chest x-ray at the start of the year. And I didn't get a call back, and I was told, like, to assume that nothing was wrong if I didn't get a call back. So my assumption is, like, no, like, damage showed up or anything. So it's just kind of like, But I am now, from now on at least, I am intending to, anytime I get a chest infection, to like go to the doctor. If only so that they can look back on it and be like, hey, why have you had like 5 chest infections in the past year. What the fuck is up with that? But yeah, I don't know what's up with it. It's really odd, to be honest. This was probably the worst one I've had. I think. I don't know. It's kind of hard to quantify, but like, my previous chest infections have not involved breathlessness to this degree. It'll usually just be like hella chest congestion and some pain. But this time, it was like, I first even realized I was getting sick because I had a fainting episode last Monday. I had like an hour where I could not stand or do anything. I couldn't even sit up because I was so lightheaded. And it was like, I can't do anything. What the fuck? And that lasted like an hour. It was very strange. I was like, that's unusual. That's not normal. That's not supposed to happen. So yeah. Which is not a typical symptom. And then it was like, I was struggling, on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I couldn't walk anywhere. Like, I had to go and get, like, food from, there's a shop directly across the street from where I live. I was literally out for 10 minutes. I couldn't fucking breathe. Like, the whole time. I felt like I had gone on a short jog. It was really bizarre. And I was just barely, like, not severe enough for them to be overly concerned. Like, they were a bit concerned, but they weren't, it was basically like, you're still, it's not unexpected for a chest infection, you know? Like, one of the main symptoms of a chest infection is, some difficulty in breathing, because, you know, your lungs are infected. Your bronchi are, like, gunked the fuck up. So, like, yeah, of course you're gonna have a little bit more trouble breathing. That's, like, normal. It was, like, very close to being an issue, where they would actually be genuinely concerned. So yeah, I had a very fun time, clearly. But yeah, I called up the doctor on Friday, late on Friday, mind you, and they were basically like, I wouldn't be too concerned at the moment. Like, I can check your chest if you want, but you've already had it checked the other day, and it didn't come up with anything. But it was like, keep an eye on it, because it was basically, I was just off of it being, like, gravely concerning. Like, I was very close to it being a real issue, essentially. Because I was basically told, if you have to take a break, like, because I live on the first floor of my flat, and I was told, like, if you have to take a break going up the stairs, get medical help. That's when it's going to become, like, a real issue. That's when we will be very, very concerned. And I was, like, just barely, like, I wasn't quite that bad. Like, it wasn't necessarily, I was at the point of, like, I could get up and down the stairs without needing to take a break, but I wouldn't necessarily want to do it more than once. Right? It's how I described it. I wouldn't necessarily want to go upstairs more than once if I could help it. Because then I was, like, starting to get quite tired. Because I couldn't fucking breathe. So, yeah, I was, like, just barely off of it being really concerning. Not quite, but quite close to it. I have escaped death, and I'm just waiting for my breathing capacity to, like, become semi-normal again. I still have a little bit of pain, but it is nowhere near as bad. Because there was a good few days there where just like I could not be in any position comfortably because my chest hurt so fucking bad. This is just like in any angle, didn't matter. And decongestant medicine was kind of saving my ass for a bit because it has paracetamol in it. And usually I'm not very reactive to pain meds. I guess it helped somewhat. I don't know if it was the decongestant itself or what. But yeah, it was basically kind of close to being really worrying. But not quite, just barely off. I'll take you, because you earn a bit more, and I don't want to come back a second time. Yeah, my cough has actually gone full throttle now, so it is trying to clear everything. That's the main thing at the moment. It's just it's the residual congestion that's trying to clear at the moment. But hey, I'm not dying. That's cool. I didn't have to go to hospital. I was genuinely concerned I might have had to because of how bad it was. That was a genuine concern on Friday. But I didn't have to. It was fine. It did improve over the weekend. I was told if it hadn't improved by today that I would have to come in again, but it has quite significantly improved, so it's chill. We good, chi. Not 100%, but it has improved, so we take that. We take what we can get. But I'm now kind of just expecting in another 3 months I'll get another one. Because that just seems to be my life at the moment. Go to bed. Bump bump. Oh, hi! Hello! Nice to meet you. My name's Carl. My dream is to open a cafe in this village. A cute little store with delicious cakes and tea. Hey, do you know about the festivals around here? There's the Egg Festival, but we can't do it unless enough eggs are collected in the collection box in the town square. I don't have chickens. It's a lot to ask just a small number of people in town. We didn't have the Egg Festival again last year. That's why I brought eggs this year. There's a notice about the festival in the collection box in the town square. So you should go have a look and help out. I'll try. I have a chicken coop, but okay. Yeah, alright then, let's meet at the Egg Festival. I do not, in fact, have chickens. Oh. Lucky! Lone wolf note. Not speaking to anyone for some time, wanting to devote yourself to working silently. A note that seems a little sad. I've spoken to people! What the fuck? Does it not count in cutscenes? I don't think I have enough time to get eggs. I think I will have to buy some. There's no way I can get a chicken coop in time. Question mark? I don't know, I can clearly space for it, but Let me get the map up. I don't remember where things are. Except this is like a really unhelpful map, actually. To be perfectly honest. Not very helpful at all. Bring 1 egg. I guess I'll like preemptively buy an egg or something. Ugh. Junk shop isn't open yet. I guess I'll collect some wood. I don't really remember how wood collection actually works in this game, to be honest. They're not in. Can't get fucking seeds yet. Oh, hi. Can I even build a coop? What the fuck am I even supposed to? At this point. Okay, you exist. You're real. Cool. You don't look familiar. You're the new farmer. I see. We're carpenters. We build and remodel. Let us know when you want to build a house or a barn. We'll do it for you. We're usually in our workshop. Hey, come over here, you two. These are my apprentices. Like you, they're just getting started. Get to know them, okay? Am I winning? No. I'm making very slow progress because it's been a hot minute. My name is Joe. Nice to meet you. This is my brother Kurt. What's up? Can I get a coop? I want a chicken coop. Whoa. I don't have enough money. Or wood. Grr. Hi, Mr. Duck. You're like always here, huh? Can I put you down? There we go. Harvest is still good. Or progress is still good. Yeah, I guess. I guess. It's very slow progress, though. I don't really remember how to... Hold on. No, that's not what I mean. I keep fucking clicking that. Hold on. I need to look some shit up just because it's been so long I don't remember how they work. See, I fucking did that. I did that already and it's showing I don't have any. What do you mean? Oh, no, that's not what I meant. No, that's also not what I meant. No. Jesus. It's been a minute. Okay, great. That's awesome, man. Computer gonna computer. Just taught a friend the complexities of file formats and image resolution. Oh boy. Hey. No. No, that's okay. Bitch. Wood. Yeah, I'm getting tired. That's fine, whatever. Oh, they're closed. Okay. Sigh. That's right, they're closed on Thursdays. It's always Thursdays. It's always Thursdays. No. I don't think I can deal with, like, these tree roots yet. No. This game is really inaccurate with the aiming sometimes. Let's eat one of these. Sell the other. Hey! Okay. We're gonna work towards a chicken coop. That's what we're gonna do. That's our goal for now. I will not end this stream without getting a fucking chicken coop. I want chickens. Wow. What was that for? Woodcutter now. Well, that makes sense. Cutting down trees to collect lumber. A note of gratitude for the years it takes for them to grow. Well, I'm not really cutting down trees, I'm just cutting logs that are already on the ground, but okay. I won't argue against getting a note. Wait, how many do I have now, actually? Hold on. So I'm supposed to go back when I get 5. I have 5 now. I guess we will, go do that tomorrow, I suppose. I don't know, I guess. Oh wait, shit. Let me get that. I... Such a funny noise. Okay, no more. I will die. I will fucking perish if I do that. Whee! Ooh, ooh. We also will not jump over anything unintentionally because that, I believe, also uses up stamina. So let's not do that. Oh. I can trip over things though, I guess. I don't know what the fuck I tripped over, but I... Is there anything here? I'll take that. That works. Just exercise. Monkey! Monkey. Monkey. Just one more. One more item. One more. And then we could go to bed. There's one there. I'll take that. I can't be bothered searching for if there's a green one. Green ones get a bit more, so they would be preferred. But beggars can't be choosers. Where'd Mr. Owl go? There he is. I say right as he shows up again. I believe if you go to bed past midnight, you don't restore as much energy, but that's fine. That's whatever. The game won't punish you severely for it. Oh, fuck, that's not what I meant to do. I meant to sell it. Okay, that's fine. I clicked the wrong button. That was on me. Oops. I should probably pick you up. Oh, put him down. Hello, puppy. Thank you. Love me. Get out of here. Oh, I have mail. Hey. What's that? I'm for you, so life is as comfy as can be. Woody at the workshop. Thanks. I guess. I'll buy an egg. Just so I can do the egg festival. Raising animals can be very challenging. It sure is comforting seeing healthy animals out in the meadow. Where's Ellen? Is she out in the field? She might be out in the field. I think she tends to be, actually, if I remember correctly. When picking up shipping items, you use a little bit of strength. You can also pick up dropped items, but this takes a bit of stamina too, so take care. Yeah, you use up stamina picking shit up, don't you? Is she in one of these buildings? I want to talk to Ellen. Oh, you're not. You're not Ellen. Pop Hank in the shop. Ask Ellen about him. I don't want to chit chat. Okay, dickhead. How are we? You were just outside. The fuck? Bro. Is Ellen in here? What? I don't think I like it here. Shed? What the fuck? Get away from me! What the fuck? Stop that! That's fucked up. Okay, wait. How do I get to Haunted Harvest Moon? Actually, I should probably put this egg elsewhere. Because it's just taking up a spot in my inventory now. I do not need this in here right now. I can't even get seeds. I guess I... Okay, well, well, fuck me. I guess I just have an egg now. But I need it for the egg festival. That's how I got it. I need it for the egg festival. And I don't have my own chicken coop yet, so... Where the fuck is Ellen? I think I need to get to Sunny Lake. I haven't been there yet. Oh, hello. Your back just crunched. Huh? Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Basil. I work as a plant hunter. Eh? So what a plant hunter does is, well, I guess, it's a job where I go find and bring back plants I've asked to locate. Recently though, there aren't as many of those types of requests. I'm planning to stay in this village for a while. So if I see you around, please be kind. Was it him I needed to talk to unlock seeds? Oh, another person? Oops. Or bunny, I guess. Oh, I love the bunny. Bunny. Gasp. Horror. Nar. Come back. Hey, who are you? I thought you were trying to harm the wild animals. I just stood there. I'm Terry. These mountains are my backyard. My job is to protect the wild animals. A lot of animals need to be protected to keep the mountains well and alive. A young person like you may not understand this, though. I'm like so upset. Starry Hill. I don't remember where the goddess is. I don't think it's this though. I need it. Oh, monkey. Hi. Hi, hello. Well, I don't think it's here. In this little corner. Burp. Well, there's not much of interest here. Yeah. I think it's better to collect various plants. Are you interested in plants? I'm interested in growing them and selling them. Oh, what the fuck? Oh, it's the top corner. Oops. I may be stupid. Trying to remember how this layout works. It's been a minute. Okay, we go up here. And we're back. Nice. I'm steadily locating places. So just keep following this path. Oh. Honey. We take that. We do need money. I think we keep going this way. Hawk's Ghost Spring. That would be it. Thank you, Blizzard, for trying to regrow the fanbase you alienated by being a terrible company. Oh, you know. Yay! Congratulations, yeah? When you collect 5 notes, they become a musical instrument. Wow. Whoa! They turned into marimba, yeah. Okay. I want you to collect more notes, yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. What's in here? Nothing. No, there's nothing down here. Okay. We'll take the green one. Yeah. It's really amazing that I'm doing all this all while carrying an egg in my backpack. Huh, Jamie's over here for some reason. The fuck is she doing over here? Oh, okay, whatever. You will give me an egg. I don't want to give you an egg. It's my egg. I paid for it. You're not getting my egg. Buy your own fucking egg. I could just use some money though. The honey, I mean. Jamie? What you doing over there? Oh? Fishing? That's not what I... Okay. No matter how hard you try, it's futile. I'm going to save her, so... Okay, good luck with that, girl. I'll just, like, bring out a hammer and I donk her in the head. It's like, good luck doing that with brain damage. Save. Yes. Should probably watch TV. Skies will be clear with plenty of bright sunshine. Eggs are needed for the upcoming Egg Festival on the 8th in the town square. We hope people place eggs in the collection box. Before you start raising animals, you need a chicken coop or a barn for them. To build these, you need a parcel of land, and while you can buy bird feed or fodder, especially if you plant pasture land. When you cut grass with a sickle, it automatically ends up in the silo. I'll tell you about minigames they have in Flowerbud Village. A minigame is a teeny tiny game. I'll talk about how to play this game next week. Thanks. Very helpful. It's like, say absolutely fucking nothing. Cheers. What do you mean? My bunny now. I'm just fucking transporting them. Yeah, you can get off here. There we go. Egg. I guess I'll go and buy another egg just in case, though. Question mark. No, I'll figure it out if I don't need that. Drop shipping. That's an option, right? Can I check how much wood I have in my inventory somewhere? Why is it? Okay. I have not whacked any moles. I have 21 lumber. I need 30, so I need to cut down just a little bit. It's a teensy bit more. That's not what I meant to do. Let's go gambling! Donk. And after that, I still need the fucking money for it. It's very difficult to get when I, like, can't do much. Can't really farm, and I have no animals, so, like, I don't have any regular produce. I kind of just have to forage. Oh, hey. Hi. There you go. Don't mind my big-ass axe. It's fine. Oops, that's not what I meant to click. Look at this. Oh, I can. Hey, nice. Okay, so the teeny tiny stumps I can actually whack. That's good then. I haven't counted how many we've actually gotten. I probably should have counted. But I'm sure it's fine. We can just cut as many as are spotted. Where are they though? Here's one. Or you can just entirely fucking miss. That's cool too, I guess. Just waste my energy. Waste my limited energy. That's very cool and awesome, game. Ugh. I'm bagging that. No. No. Good God. Okay, I think that should be a question mark. Yeah, I have enough lumber now. So you can give it a rest. I do very badly need to get my stamina improved. I don't remember how to do that though. I think I just have to make progress. I think. Ah, 50 isn't bad. Oh, no, that's not what I meant. Oops. I don't think I can really cook anything just yet. Hmm. I mean, maybe I would be able to with some ingredients. I don't know. I don't think I have any recipes. Actually, let me check in the bookcase. I seem to remember something with that. Oop. That's not what I see. Get a big animal notebook. Oh, yeah, that's fine. I don't need that. I was hoping for recipes, but I... Never mind, I guess. What the fuck? Oh, hi. Do I even... No, not this. I feel bad. That seems fucked up. That seems fucked up to do, but I think that's the mechanic. I don't know what I get out of it. Oh my god. Oh, now I can go in. Okay, finally. Jeez. Welcome. Oh, are you a new farm owner? I see. So your name is Navi. I have a farm which I run with my daughter. Nina? Nina? Yes, Mom. What? This is a new farm owner. Say hello. Very nice to meet you. I'm Nina. It's hardly a farm. We just grow a few meager crops here. I'll give you this. It's a notebook with information about crops. Thanks. I got a crop notebook. Yay. If there's something you don't understand, please read it. We sell various types of vegetable and grass seeds as well as tree saplings. As a sign of friendship, I'll bring you some turnip seeds. Oh, thank you. Please. Please give me something to farm. I'm begging. Oh. We'll go kind of light on it for now, I think. I don't even have space anyway. Let me go plant these, I guess. Or try to. We'll see if I even have enough stamina for it. Or if I have to, like, go up to the mountains and just find a herb. Find an herb. Oh, I've got a couple in my toolbox now, I guess. Well, sure. Perfect. That is in fact what I need. Yeah, I know you're tired. I think... I don't remember if this... how this plants actually. Come on. Oh. I feel like I vaguely remember it, planting in threes, but I don't know. Let me see. If I waste some on the first, that's fine. Yeah, it does. It does 3x3s. Okay, shit. No, fuck. That's not what I meant to do. Oh, you're fine. Don't be dramatic. That's not at all what I meant to do. Okay, I will start this tomorrow. I clearly don't have the stamina for it at the moment. Ah, yes, the Egg Festival. Deal with this. They plant some stuff. No! Okay. Fuck's sake. It's not what I was trying to do. Can I get you out of the way, please? Thanks. I'm just gonna put them here for now. It's okay if we waste some seeds initially. That's fine. Okay. Yeah, okay. It's always 3x3. I just kind of forgot. Hi, Mr. Dog. No. Oh, for fuck's sake. Didn't realize I was still holding those. Okay. We'll quickly sort out our crops and then go to the festival. Yippee! Oh, for fuck's sake, really? I use it once and it's already ran out. Are you fucking shitting me? Oh, that's really annoying. Okay. Please let me have enough stamina for this. It's like, what, 18 squares? Okay, it's fine. You'll live. Probably, anyway. Okay, Jesus. Fucking chill out. Bro, my guy has no stamina. We need to get to the festival though, sooner rather than later, so I'm not... I'll get to the other ones later, it's fine. In we go! Welcome to the annual Egg Festival. We appreciate your attendance. Please eat and enjoy yourself today. Please give me food. Hi! My goal in life is to build a cute cafe and have everyone eat my tasty cakes. Oh. I like milk and eggs, but when it comes to cake, I'm not a big fan. But it's good for recovering strength. Yeah. Sweet things can relieve fatigue, so I eat them occasionally. I like things seasoned with herbs and spices. Oh, hi. Hi, are you eating? Egg. Huh. This festival is possible because I supplied the eggs. Be grateful. Hey, jeez. Yeah. Eggs are superb healthy food. Eggs do contain cholesterol, but it's okay if you eat them in moderation. But I guess it's time to end the party. We hope that you attend next year too. Okay. Shh. Wow! Egg dish note. Let's make delicious food with eggs. A fun note for the wonderful smell. Aye. Okay. Oh, kitty. And I still have an egg, so I could just fucking eat this. No. That works. I'll do it. No, up here. Still remembering the route. We'll just deal with this much. Oh, no, that's not what I meant to do. I meant to put it away. Yeah, we'll do that many seeds. That should be fine. Save. Go to bed. Oh. I simply moved my dog. Oh, it's cloudy. Water, water, water. And after that, I guess we can go foraging. We mostly just need money now. So I think we need like 4K for chicken coop. Something like that. The barn might have been cheaper somehow though. I don't remember. I feel like it's usually chicken coops are cheaper, but... Oh, no. Ah. Ah. No. No. I love how it wastes energy when there isn't any water in it. Wow, very handy. Yeah, you're tired already. I know. You're not very good at stamina. Should probably at some point go mining as well, but... Mining scary. Oh, hi. Chipmunk. I will befriend all the local animals. Hey. We'll eat this one. Sell the other one there. You know. I think logs should be able to spawn up here. I don't really remember actually. I feel like they should be. Yeah, there's one there. No more up here. Nope. Let's see. How many do I have? 39. I need one more to reach 40. I don't know why the music gets kind of crusty every once in a while. Just for like a split moment. It's very strange. Nope, not here. Woo! Tired. Eepy. Even though I slept like a significant amount of today. Hey. We can grab one more just as a treat. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. I think it's a bit late to try and go down to check if I have enough money for like a barn, but I don't really need this right now. See if I'm gonna look up how to expand the thing. Martha. Apparently. Have I even met Martha yet? I don't think I have. No, I haven't. I guess we'll get back up and forage a bit more. Try and build up some more money. Probably the best thing you can do at the moment. Oh, yes, perfect. Give me that. And you're helpful too. Any more over here? More green ones? Oh, there's purple ones though. And a flower. Oh, hey, this one. Because these give 100, which is pretty solid. Maybe come back for another round after us as well. Maybe. Foraging is much easier when you actually have like some amount of space, but oh well. Woohoo. Woohoo. Whee. I do love this game though. It's the one that got me into farming sims in general. Which, I mean, I only play sometimes, to be honest. Like, it's like a when I'm in the mood thing. Really? Do you use that much energy just like stuffing things into the shipping box? Dude. Come on, man. These are like tiny little leaves. Come on. Should not be that difficult, surely. They don't weigh that much. Come on. Thump, 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 thump. Into the bag. In the bag. And in the bag. Well, in my hands. There's no room in my bag. My shitty little rucksack. Woohoo! Woohoo! I think I'm gonna try and go until I can manage to get myself a chicken coop. I am getting quite sore though, because obviously I'm exerting quite a lot speaking so much. I don't want to go too long. But I do want to get a chicken coop first. That's my goal. Uh-huh. Oh, fucking helpful. Really? I think you can get a... Oh, fuck. I can't get past. Well... I guess we'll hope for rain soon. Oh, great. I'm not gonna be able to, like, get the other side either. This is a little stupid. Why? Can get that one at least. I don't think it's gonna work. Okay. Well. Well, that's an issue. Oh well, I guess we'll stick to lines in the future. Oh, hi. You don't have to walk into me, man. It's a bit rude. Are they all out and about? Oh, what just happened? What the fuck? Huh? Don't do that, please. I did not ask you to do that. Mr. Carpenter, sir. I can remember where you even are. Oh, I missed it. The fuck? I miss it. Ah, fuck. The one day. Fine. Fuck, man. Rude. Whose place is this? This is Mayor's place. Hello? Hello? Yeah, it is. Yeah. Abby, if you're ever in a jam, you should ask the shop people. Wow, thanks. Okay. Theories, I guess. It's not very helpful, Mr. Mayor. Oh, hat. I want to stuff it in my bag and take it home with me. I'm tired though. Let's see. I don't think you can get like sprinklers or anything. I don't know. I don't think so. Potato. Yes. There's something you don't know about roots and crops? Look at the manual. Thanks. I guess. Well, lesson learned. Plans and lines. Hey, Erica, you have a goal for everything and think about what you're going to do next. I hear a mole. Or I did. I don't know where the fuck it's gone. Might have disappeared now that I've done that. Oh no, you're here. Oops. I don't really know what the point of that is. Because we can't build anything today. Just kind of have a quick look. No, no showing, no dying note, stationary note, whistle note, notation note. Oh, you know what I could do? I could go fishing. I have a fishing rod. I could just fish. I could fish for money. Bum bum bum. Let's do that. Let's do some fishing. I'll do. Ah, requisite fishing time. Hell yeah. Do I remember how to fish? No. Do the fish already hate me? Yeah. Oi! You motherfucker. Hey! You bitch! Oi! Oh my god. I remember this frustrating the shit out of me as a kid, actually. The fish would just not give a shit. Bitch! Oh my god. Oh. Hello. Hi. Oh, sorry. I'm distracted. Hi. Hello. Thank you for the raid. Such star sign. Let me give you a shout out real quick. Once I pause this game. Bum, 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 bum. Hopefully this will work. There we go. Ooh! No, all about distractions. You're playing Final Fantasy 14. Hell yeah, what were you doing? I'm so obsessed with Final Fantasy 14. It's not even funny. Get things back up. Yeah, what were you doing? Have you climbed the tower yet? It's running out later. Let me get back to my fishing pain. Daily roulette, but before that played several free games. Oh, okay. Fair enough, fair enough. Were you farming for whatchamacallums? Totems? Or sorry, my brain. I'm splitting my attention right now. I got a dace. Farming totems are where you just like leveling or just for funsies. Or maybe for comms. I don't know. I guess people do roulettes for a lot of things, huh? I've been trying to do them to level Pictomancer and it has been horrendous because the queues are so bad right now. For DPS at least. They're painful. Oh. I had like a 20-minute queue. Yeah, queue times. I had a 20-minute queue on my leveling roulette yesterday. Just to get Copperbell Mines! I was so pissed! I was so angry! It was like 25 minutes. I was like, motherfucker. Like, didn't even get a level out of it. If I ever picked up the first DPS, I knew I had to get done quickly. I wouldn't have even... I didn't even bother when Dawn Trail first released. I was like, I'm gonna get stuck in queues for like 3 hours. So I put it off. Can you please, no, fish, please. 45 minutes. Oh. Oh. Pain. Yeah, when I had to level Sage, it was significantly easier because, like, you know, you you get healer privilege, and you get to just queue and then fuck off. Like, get in instantly. And then DPS right now is just the worst. Oh, fuck me. That's not working. I hate fishing in this game. It's actually kind of torturous. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to... Oh, but yeah, 45 minutes. 15! Fuck me. Healing tanker does instant Q because everyone is doing DPS. Yeah. Makes it so much easier when you're trying to level those. But DPS, oh, it's rough. Like actual torture. Lily's just kind of like, okay, I guess I'll just vibe for now. Great if you can get like a friend to queue with you as either healer or tank. It at least kind of makes it more bearable. If not also instant. But most of my friends have been occupied, so I'm just kind of having to deal with it. Duck. Hello, Duck. Yes, if you want to like leave and go get water and rest, no worries. Fair enough. Streaming hard. Streaming tiring. I keep forgetting my buttons. Please eat! Please eat! Please go eat. Food is important. You'll be lurking while you eat. Fair enough. No worries. That's perfectly acceptable. I hate the movement controls. I hate the way this aims. I'm not sure how much longer I am gonna go, because I was saying a little bit ago, because I'm recovering from a chest infection at the moment. I'm mostly okay now, but oh my god. But I am still having like some breathing capacity issues. So like talking for an extended period of time is a little difficult. I'm hoping it'll be back to normal soon. Oh yeah, I should probably put this away. That would make it easier to run about, huh? But you know, wahoo, wahey. I don't need seeds. I'm good on seeds at the moment. I need the carpenter. Where's the carpenter again? There you are. I wish the camera was zoomed out like just a teeny tiny bit more. But obviously it's built for... okay. I need 3,000. Well, shit. $3,000 for a chicken coop. Fuck! Money is so hard to get at this point in the game, though. I haven't even had, like, any crops finished growing. Duck. Quack, quack. I guess we'll go foraging again, because I don't want to fish. Fishing is not a good time in this game, admittedly. Just because the fish are so wishy-washy. Okay, you'll work. Give me you. Just collect whatever I can. Could go mining, I guess. I don't really want to, though. I don't like fighting that much in this game. Suppose we will have to at some point now. don't think I grabbed a hammer though. So, whoops. Let's see, is there any herbs anywhere? Not here. Sometimes there's some stuff that spawns in that little pocket there, but doesn't seem to be very often. At least for the moment. Okay, purple herb. Oh, there's a green one. Perfect. We do like a good green one. They get me 100. No, not you. You. And now we walk. Painfully slowly. Whee. I do like the music though. It's very nostalgic for me. God. One of the weirdest things while I've had this chest infection is that it's kind of settled down a bit now. There was a good few days where I would just feel like I was fucking starving like every hour, no matter how much I ate before that, because my body was just burning so much food. It wasn't even funny. I would have a full dinner, like quite a lot of food, and then an hour later I'd be like, I had felt like I hadn't eaten all day. I was like, holy shit. Like, I just ate. Oops. It's mostly settled now, though, at least. Not fully, but, like, mostly. Better than it was. I'm saying that because I'm actually a little hungry, even though I just ate. I didn't just eat, I ate, like, 3 or 4 hours ago, to be fair, so. I don't know, maybe I do need a snack. But I did have a protein bar, like, right before I started the stream, so... kind of rude, I don't know. It's occurred to me that your childhood game is using Wii buttons. Yeah, I was a Nintendo kid. I didn't have, like, an Xbox or a PlayStation until... Well, I didn't get a PlayStation until I was an adult. And... I never got super into Xbox games. We did have an Xbox One. I didn't realize you were my generation. I'm only 22! I'm not even 23 yet! Can't be that shocking. How old did you think I was? I'm still like fully in barely an adult mindset. I mean, most people I know were around for the 90s. I'm so used to being on the younger side of things. Fair enough. I'm the same. I'm one of those. Being 22 puts me squarely in the zillennial sort of area, where you're kind of in that awkward midpoint. So I'm assuming you're probably around the same, and you know what I mean. Yeah, like most of my friends are also slightly older than me. Some of them kind of significantly older than me, which I didn't even realize until semi-recently. Like, yeah, I guess you are. Yeah, it's always quite odd to think about, I suppose. You kind of just guess. Or go by vibes, and then you're like, oh wait. So I always feel quite funny when I hear about how old my friends actually are. And it makes it even funnier, because in my friend group where I am the youngest, I am also the only one who has a degree. It's like, huh. Ow, what did I trip? Did I just trip on a weed? The fuck? But it does become quite funny. Albeit a couple of them are in school again now. But because I went to university directly after I finished high school, I guess I just finished my undergrad a little earlier. Whereas a lot of them take a little bit longer. But it does make it a little funny. It's like, wow. I'm both somehow the youngest and the most highly educated, question mark? Technically, by consideration of how education system works, I guess. I don't know if I would actually consider myself such, because it's a bachelor's in design. I don't feel that highly educated. But it does. There's one of my friends who it's actually it's his birthday today. So he'll be 24 now. But he's about a year older than me. I thought that we were like the same age, but no, he's a year older than me. I thought we were the same age because I guess I don't know. I don't know why I thought that, because like his birthday is like a little over a month before mine, so like we don't have any crossover, so I don't know why I thought that for a while. But that's the closest to my age that there is in my group. I am unfortunately the baby of my friend group. My main friend group, at least. There are some groups of friends I'll be middle to oldest in, but not that one. That one I am squarely baby. Like my friends I met through streaming, I am the baby, unfortunately. And they also kind of forget. They kind of forget that I'm like 4 years younger than some of them. They're like, oh yeah. I remember we had a conversation about it at one point where it was just like, huh, yeah, I guess you are. It's quite funny to think about. It's not like I hide my age. I do tend to state it, but I guess you just don't really think about it all the time, do you? Like, once someone's an adult, it's like, yeah, who cares? Well, I don't have a horse, so... How much money do I have? I need 3,000 for a coupe. Where am I at right now? I'm at... Oh, I'm so close. Okay. Well, forage just a bit more. After I water the plants I can water. That's not what I meant to grab. That's also not what I want. Oh, fuck. Should probably also clear the weeds, I guess. I guess I should do that. But yeah, a lot of my childhood games are, Wii and DS. And some 3DS, obviously, as well. But like, The ones I'll describe as my childhood games were more so on the DS. One of the games I'm also wanting to play, because I guess I'm in a bit of a quote-unquote retro game fixation at the moment. I just want to like go back and play older games. But I also want to play through Pokemon Black and White, or well, more specifically Pokemon White, because that is one of my favorite games ever. And it's been a hot minute since I played it. It's my favorite Pokemon game. And then I want to do White 2 as well. I think I'll actually put this in here. But I am also wanting to do that. I am fully intending to get back to Rad as well. I I could have played that today, but I'll be honest, that game makes me laugh so much. I was genuinely worried I'd actually like pass out from lack of air given my current state. Like that was a genuine concern. It's like, I probably shouldn't play a game that makes me laugh so hard that even when I'm not recovering from a chest infection, I can barely breathe. Just from the sheer amount of laughing. You know, that might not be the best one to play right now. So that game was killing me. But I do fully intend to get back to it, just when I'm slightly more recovered. No. Just when I'm slightly more recovered. So probably this weekend? Question mark? We'll see. I'm hoping I should be better by this weekend, like fully. I think tomorrow I'll probably be mostly okay, but I do think my breath capacity is gonna need a bit of time just to get back to normal. So I think my bronchi were perhaps a little bit overly inflamed. They had a bit of a tough time. I don't really care about that too much. But my thingamajig that I need for rocks doesn't really work right now, so oh yeah, I guess I need to carry this because my bag is full. That might not be the hammer, actually. I'm forgetting. Is there a pickaxe and tools? Maybe that's what I need. I guess I'll check that. Oh, there's fruit there as well. I somehow missed. Even though I had to walk past it earlier, so I don't know why I didn't see that. I guess I just went kind of the short route there. Anyway. This should make it so that, the next day in game, I should be able to buy myself a chicken coop. And I think I need to wait for that to be built. I don't really remember. I think you do need to wait. Oops. I think it takes like 2 days, if I remember correctly. It's been a while. When would I have last played this? Like 10, 12 years ago or something? Something like that. I don't think I played it a lot when I was in high school, so yeah, probably about that. I think I can get a musical note for that. Maybe not. I don't know. Well, I got a musical note for something. Garbage can note. There are garbage in the garbage can. It's an important rule to protect the beautiful surroundings. I did that earlier, but I guess maybe I had to, like, check on the ground first. Oops. My magical Wii has some small issues. Oh, hey, there's a fruit right there. I'll just clean up like a teeny tiny bit. Da, da, Let me check. Let me check my tools real quick. Real quick, like. No, there isn't a pickaxe. This is in fact for rocks. Hold on, let me look this up. Because I swear to God, it was not... It was not, for the life of me, getting the rocks. Let me see. Oh, it's like... It's 3 hits that I need. Okay. I need to do 3 hits to break a single rock, I guess. Oh, let's try that. I want to get rid of these rocks here. Hey! Hey! Oh, don't you tire out now. You're fine. Jesus. That was not 3 hits. Fucking hell. Well, I guess that's all we're managing. 2 rocks. That's it. Only 2. Coop time? Coop time? Coop. Oh, should be fine. Is there something? No, fucking. Oh my god. Well, the weather is not nice, so. At least I don't have to water my plants. Unfortunately, it's a bit too late for those, so... Well... Oh well. We plant in lines next time. We remember this, we learn. We learn and we grow. Not you. You. Hi, make me a chicken coop, please. Are you going with that then? Yeah. Gimme coop. I know it's not my property. Can you bring it to my property? I don't know why you brought it over here. Okay, we'll do it here, because then we have a bit of room. Nice. Yay, chicken. Chicken coop. We will forge some more though, because... Actually, no, I need to get grass. I need to get some grass seeds. That's what I need. Oh, it's just not open yet. Ooh. Mushroom. Purple. Probably dangerous. That's fine though. Oops, that's not what let's do. Let's do that. I don't know why it's... No. I did not mean to click that. Yeah, we will forage a little bit while we're waiting for that shop to open. There's another mushroom there. I wonder when the junk shop will open. That would be handy. Yawn. Not very much, but sure. I should at least now be able to actually go and buy the seeds that I need. I need to get some grass seeds for the chickens. And fodder. I'll take 2 for the moment. I can't afford much right now. I spent all my money on on a coop that I probably wouldn't even be able to afford chickens for just yet. Let me grab this mushroom too. Oh, it is open now. I really wish it would tell you when shop's open. Just seems very random. Welcome. Oh, we haven't met, have we? I see you came here on the farm business plan. I'd like you to give it your best. I'd be delighted if we could help you out as a tool shop. Oh, that's right, this... I got a tool notebook. Oh, thanks. It's a book about tools. You have your work cut out for you, but keep at it. Okay, thanks. What? Oh no, it's terrible, terrible! There's been another explosion. What the fuck? What are you doing? Hey Anne, at least say hello to our customer. Huh? Huh? Oh! Are you the ranch owner people have been talking about? Hello! I'm Ed, future inventor. Nice to meet you. Whenever there's a spare moment, she's always tinkering with machines. I'm always worried. Eh? There's no need to worry, is there? I'm working hard to come up with a popular product for our store. Okay, until next time. She should act a little more like a woman. I feel badly for my departed wife. The fuck? Let her blow things up. That's the most womanly thing there is, obviously. Blowing things up is very effeminate. Whee! Loop-de-loop. Oh, hi, Jamie. Ha! I hate rain. Why are you standing in it? You could be at home. Okay. Well, that's what makes this a bit handy. That's not what I meant to do. So what we want is... We want a little bit of space around it, because we do want to kind of section off a little bit. So that the chickens aren't just wandering around random areas. Not what I meant to do. Okay. So, what I'm gonna have to do at this point. No, that's not what I meant to do. Why have I only got grassies? That's not what I meant to do. I think I put the wrong thing in. Oops. Give me that back. Oops. I was clearly not paying full attention there. My bad. I may be a little silly. Just 'cause these haven't... Okay, no, I guess they are. They're just less fertile. Okay, that's chill, I guess. I don't think I can steal these from yous. So I think I need to get it off of free land. Or grab some rocks. I could grab some rocks. I would also do it, I suppose. It's gonna take a little while. No. Yes. Yoink. Really? How? How did I trip on that? Just steal some woods. That's fine. That's cool. Yeah. Need to block it off for the chickens. So that when they go outside, they don't, just walk around random areas. So I guess we'll work on that the next couple of days. Until the coop is ready. We can use this rock as well for that. Let's go steal some more planks. Or stakes. And maybe some rocks, I guess. We can grab some rocks too. Rocks also work. Yoink. Hoo-hoo. Hoo-hoo. Yeah, so I want to... rock. Rock. It's a shrock. Sorry. The fucking bird. A fucking bird gets to my head. Still a rock. We can clean it up and make it not use rocks so much later. But it's easier to get rocks. They work just as well. Let's get to bed. We can do the other side. Tomorrow. Don't need to like... I don't think we need to fully block it off. I think just enough for it to like prevent the chickens from running off. Hello? Oh, hi. I finished the assigned work. Oh, it's already done. Okay. I thought it was gonna take another day. I did a spectacular job. Might guarantee the sturdiness. See you later. I'll be waiting for more work. You will get more work, trust me. Hang in there. She can build a coop that fast? Well, damn. Who am I to say no to getting more work from you? Oh, hey. So I can sell these now. Recover some costs. I don't think I get anything for this shit. No. Can also probably just put it down on the ground. Who cares? Yeah, it's fine. Why can't I grab this one? That's a little weird. Oh, okay, weird. Strange, but okay. And I can harvest these. And I'm gonna have to have— ooh, 340. Yum. I think I'm gonna prioritize cabbages for a bit. I think cabbages are a little more important than potatoes, maybe. But I will hammer out the other center ones here. Cause yeah, we don't want we do not want to plant in those again. That would be a little silly. A little bit silly. I think you can hammer down an area like that. I don't have the most room for farming, but that's fine for now. We can get more room later. Yeah, there we go. So long as I keep these clear, it's fine. I don't think I can do much with that. Well. Come on. Good thing. Unfortunately, I will have to waste some seeds, but that's my bad. I'm just a bit stupid. It's fine. Okay, hold on. Let me put these back. I also need to water. Probably gonna have to grab some food as well. And also, do I have enough for chicken? I don't know. Let's see. No, let me check. Let's see if I can get chicken. Hello. I have a coop. I don't have enough money for a chicken. So we have a bit more time for prepping, I suppose. I'll probably have enough the day following this. And I think I'll probably call it there for stream today. Just to give my lungs a little bit of a break. So I'm not overexerting them like straight away, right as they're trying to recover. We pace it a little bit. know. Shh. What? No. That's not what I meant. I don't think I can put like a tree in that corner or anything. Probably not. My arm's starting to hurt as well. We'll get through this day, get a chicken, get through tomorrow, and then I'll probably end it there. Methinks that'll be good. A good place to stop. Oysters is a bit easier to grab than steaks as well. I think you can get steaks by putting wood into the, like by getting lumber and then taking it out of the, like, wood stock, but, Okay. What do you mean, no? Really? Okay, we're being silly now. Oh, you're fine, shush. Look, I'll go find like a little bit of food or something, okay? Jeez. Like, berry. You like berry. Very good. Berry help. Berry make all problems go away. I do want to get rid of those trees I have there because they're a bit annoying. Annoyingly placed. And like kind of thoroughly unhelpful. You kind of prevent me from like blocking this off. But I think I do need a slightly better, a slightly better axe for that. Oh no, no, don't do that. I do want to get rid of this rock though, because I think I have one more rock in here that I kind of don't need. Put it there. Oh, there's another one. We'll also put it here. And if the chicken escapes past that, well, they can just do that, I guess. I'll live with it. We'll just make it mostly difficult for it to pathfind its way out. Up and down. Don't know if I need to water those or not. I don't know, I guess I'll sort it too. I guess so. Okay, well that's fine. I guess these ones get natural water. Really need to hope that these will be ready. These will be ready before the other ones grow. 'Cause if not, uh-oh. You know what? I might move these rocks out of the way, actually. I might not put them here. I think it'll mostly be just that back bit to worry about, probably. You're fine. Shh. Stop complaining. Put them here. This is fine. That's not really where I meant to put it, but okay. That's fine. Sure. Annoying. I should have... Yes, I should have money. Maybe even for 2 chickens. Wow. Although I do need to get feed too. So maybe only just 1. Oh. Corn. Yes. Corn. Spice of bird feed. Yeah, I don't quite have enough for a second chicken just yet. Let's go see our chicken now. Hello, Mr. Chicken. Hello. Hello. Hi. Coin, you're doing great today. Put out lots of feed. Then you'll just have like 5 days straight where I don't really have to do that much. What I can also do is, because there is an incubator here where you can put eggs in, to make them into more chickens. So there is that as well. But yeah, we got a chicken, we got a little farm going. Oh. Quack, 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 quack. Quack, 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 quack. And hopefully the chicken will not escape to strange and unusual places. I believe I can also feed this to my chickens as well. Think you can feed these to them? Yeah, it's like a little treat. Well, as an alternative. So you can do that. That's something. You can't get out here. I'll probably have difficulty even getting over here. Because of that. But there isn't anything stopping them from going out this way. But that's fine. I don't think they'll wander that far. Stop running. I want to love you. Let me give you love. Oh, Ellen. Hello. I think raising animals can be tough, but do your best. It's a ranch, so it's better to have lots of animals, right? Why did she shout that? It's better to have lots of animals, right? Bark. No, I give you attention. Oh, sorry. I'm not gonna water you. I just wanted to see if I could No, I can't do anything with Jamie's dog. I just wanted to fuck about. I don't think I ever have been in Jamie's house before. Because I think you have to get their friendship quiet. What are you doing here? This is... Girl? How did... What the fuck? How? What? Huh? What the f- How did that chicken even get out? What? Okay. Strange. But not my problem. That's Jamie's chicken, so... Who care? Not me. I do wanna... I don't know if, Oh, hi. Hey, how are you? There are all sorts of announcements on TV and the message board in the square. Check them out for the latest local news, okay? Alright. Oh, yeah, that's perfect. So, I want to try mining a little bit. So, got a bit of time and not too much farm work left to do. Or not too much farm work in general at the moment. Yeah, well, that was the plan, yes. Yes, I can try just a little bit mining. Oh, hi. I don't just think about inventions when studying things. I think about how rationally and effectively it can work.
Yeah.
Hello. In addition to ore, I hear you can dig up things like grass roots to use for medicine. I don't have a shovel.
Oh.
Yo! Have you come to dig up ore too? Tim calls it a battle of intuition, but I think it's a battle of physical strength. Actually, I think I need the... New rancher, huh? Wonder how long you'll last. I just got here? Okay, hold on. I think I do actually need the... whatchamacallit. To start with. That's my bad. Oh, what are you doing over here now, huh? Let me go get the... Is it the hoe? I don't... My brain is gone kind of blank now. Yeah, the hoe. We'll do just a little bit. We won't do too much. I mean, we can't do all that much anyway, but you know what I mean. See if we can get anything at all. No. Oh. Yeah, right. Oh, maybe. Oh, I want that. No. What's this? Oh, this is good actually. Very healthy. Very demure. Grab it. Okay, actually. Yes. That's all I have in my bag. That's all the bag room I have. It's not very much. But gemstones are probably good. This moonstone here. I don't think it sells for too much, but we're slow and steady, you know? Wow! Lucky! A note of sublime radiance for sparkling gems dug up from beneath the ground. Wow. Oh, well. You don't pick up that in the future, I guess. This copper gets you 50. I think you do need some copper for, later. For upgrading tools and stuff. No, we're gonna sleep first. And then we'll save. And I think we'll call it there. We got our chicken. We got our coop. We got our crops going. We vibing. We're only 16 days into spring. Wow. Yeah, thank you for coming. If you came for a little bit or a lot of it, either way, I appreciate it. I don't have a schedule, as per usual. I just stream when I feel like it. I do intend to stream Rad at some point to continue it. Probably this weekend? Question mark? I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. Let me see if I can find someone to raid. Don't mind it, inconspicuously, pausing. Let's see, is anyone I know streaming? Oh, Shadow's streaming. We'll go, raid Shadow. Nice and easy. Let's go. He is streaming, FNAF Into the Pit. Very fun. Very cool. I have a massive FNAF hyperfixation, so sweet. Yeah. So let's go. Be nice, Shatter. No raid message. I forgotten what I used to use for my raid message by this point. But yeah, let's go. Thank you for coming. If you came for a little bit or a lot of it, either way, I appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.